Hey guys, and welcome back to Speedcubing. These are the top 5 best speed cubes of 2020. So needless to say, 2020 has been a very interesting year for speedcubing. On the one hand, you have the lack of competitions and all that, not a lot of world records being set, but on the other hand, we also have had some great advancements in cubing hardware. So today I want to talk about these 5 puzzles which all came out in 2020, and which I think best represent these recent advancements in the speedcubing market. Not only are the best of the best speed cubes slowly getting better, with lots of cool incremental innovations, but we've also been seeing, especially over the last few years, the rise of incredible budget cubes. Now this is demonstrated really well by the first puzzle on this list, the YuHu V2 M, which is of course a recent Megaminx release from YJ. Now even though this very quickly became my main, I actually at first wasn't even considering it for this list until I looked back at the price tag. This thing is just $13, which is incredible for a fully magnetic Megaminx. Just to give you a bit of perspective, the original YuHu Megaminx, which came out a few years ago at about the same price, did not have magnets and it turned way worse, and this was considered an amazing value Megaminx at its time. And another fun fact is that the very first magnetic Megaminxes sold, made out of the X-Man Galaxy by Cubicle Labs, cost around $70, and that was seen as amazing at the time, that you could even put magnets inside of a Megaminx, despite the price. So fast forward a few years to 2020, when the cheapest magnetic Megaminx still costs around $30, and then this thing comes out at just $13, and not only does it have magnets, but it also turns amazingly, even compared to the best Megaminxes on the market, then I think it's clear that we have one of the bigger jumps in price to performance that we have ever seen in a speedcubing category, which is why I think it fits well on this list. Now next up is a pretty obvious one, the GAN 11M Pro. Now this is one of the 2 puzzles on the list that I would say aren't incredible value compared to what you could get with a more budget cube. However, even though the price tag of this thing is kind of ridiculous at $65, I felt like I just could not leave it off the list simply because the amount of performance you can get out of this thing is frankly unrivaled by most other 3x3 speed cubes today. And maybe it's not so much the incredible performance that makes me like this cube so much. I mean, making a cube turn better and better can only go so far, but something about the comfort of this cube, it's like they took the classic light and airy feeling of a GAN cube and just added a level of fluidity and kind of smoothness to the turning that's just kind of unparalleled from any other cube. Like, maybe I'm exaggerating, but there's something about this cube that just makes it so much more comfortable than anything else I've tried before. And that's not even to mention the incredible innovations of this cube. It's the lightest one on the market. It has these incredible core magnets, which basically lets you feel the magnetic pull earlier in a turn than you'd normally be able to. It has this brand new magnet strength adjustment, as well as all of GAN's usual tensioning and elasticity features. The only reason this cube isn't higher on the list is because of its price. $65 is just too much for the average person to spend on a 3x3, and that's also the reason that there's going to be another 3x3 later in this list. So moving on to the next puzzle here, this is the MGC 6x6, and I realize this puzzle actually came out at the end of 2019, but I unboxed it in 2020, so it counts. Now this 6x6 kind of came out of nowhere, but it is incredible. So let me give you a bit of context. This was the other best 6x6 at the time, the X-Man Shadow M, and on paper it's a pretty good cube. I mean, it feels nice, it has really good performance, it has magnets and all that, but like most big cubes, it's just not anything special, and especially just doesn't feel very fast in your hands. This cube, on the other hand, something about the turning just really seems to put the speed in speed cubing, and it's especially noticeable on these outer layers here as you're doing 3x3 stage. This cube is just fast. This thing was just such an unexpected step up in performance. It instantly made me like 20 seconds faster. And that's not even to mention the most crazy thing. This cube was $50, which seemed pretty reasonable at the time. Wow, this cube is just half of that, at $25. So yeah, the fact that a brand new 6x6 comes out and destroys all the other ones is pretty cool, but it's kind of expected that it'll happen time to time. But the fact that it destroys all the other ones at half the price, that's just ridiculous. Also, X-Man just released a second version of their Shadow, but it's still pretty expensive, and I hear it's not a whole lot better than the original. So I imagine X-Man was just as shocked as we are that a budget cube could take the 6x6 throne. Now you may be a bit surprised by the second to last puzzle on this list, but hear me out because I think I have a pretty good reason to put it there. This is the QiYi Clock. Now the reason I'm putting this so high on the list is simple. It was the very last puzzle in the WCA, so out of the group of puzzles that you can compete in officially at a cubing competition, that got a decent speed cube version of it, or a speed puzzle version, I guess. Now what do I mean by that? Well, just look at any other puzzle in the WCA. 2x2 through 7x7, Megaminx, Pyraminx, Cube, Square 1, all of them. We have had version upon version of every single one of those speed cubes getting better and better and better for years on end now, except the clock. This is the one that's been left out, presumably because it's not a cube, of course. But I mean, it's in the World Cube Association, good enough. It's one of the oldest Rubiks puzzles ever made back in the 80s, yet this is the best version of it that we had up until the year 2020. The only improvement that we ever had upon the original Rubiks version from the 80s was putting magnets on it, which wasn't even a mass-produced thing. You had to do it yourself. Sure, there have been a handful of other clock releases through the years, but with the possible exception of the recent Shengshao, every single one of those was basically just an exact copy of the Rubiks, and many of them actually managed to turn worse than the original from 30 years ago. And that's why the QiYi Clock is just so amazing, so revolutionary. This thing just turns incredibly. After completely redesigning the clock's mechanism with over 200 internal magnets, it's literally impossible to describe how big of a difference using this puzzle makes over the original unless you've tried one. Like seriously, this is the single biggest jump in cubing performance that we have seen in years, way bigger than any other puzzle on this list. Alright, I hope you guys didn't find my comments about the clock too inflammatory, so let's finish up with a nice uncontroversial cube, a 3x3. This is the MoYu RS3M 2020, the best value 3x3 you can buy. Okay, well in fairness, there are a lot of great budget 3x3s on the market nowadays. I just really want to make clear that they exist, and you should definitely consider buying them, especially if you don't have a lot of money. This one is definitely the best one that I own, and it very well might be the best one on the market. Now what do I mean by a budget speed cube? How can it be this great? So this thing has all the same features as your average high-end 3x3. It has magnets, and perhaps its one flaw is that the magnets are a tad bit strong, but it's really not that bad. It has this nice adjustability, so you can adjust the tension and the elasticity, just like all the best and most expensive 3x3s. But most importantly, this thing has some performance. I would say the performance of this cube is definitely at least, say, 97% of what you could get in your best, most fancy, expensive GAN cube. And all of that for $9. Yes, 9. That is less than 7 times as much as the 11M Pro. And in fact, for people with certain turning styles, you might actually get better times on this cube than you would on the GAN. So yeah, this cube is just an amazing value, rivaling even the best speed cubes for a fraction of the price. And that's why it's so high on this list, compared to, say, the GAN 11M Pro, which is a really good speed cube, but frankly, a terrible value. Now, like I said earlier, the performance of this cube definitely isn't equal to a GAN cube. There is a tiny little difference in, say, the fluidity of it. Now, the biggest difference between this and, say, the 11M Pro, in my opinion, is that cube is just endlessly comfortable to solve on, whereas this cube just feels a little bit more basic. Don't get me wrong, the performance is amazing, but it just feels like a bit of a cheaper cube. So even if you're getting the very same times, you'll enjoy the experience a little bit more on the GAN. Still good enough to be number 1 on this list. Anyway, yeah, that's pretty much it for this video. These are, in my opinion, the top 5 best new speed cubes of 2020, whether that means being a super amazing value cube or just a cube with great performance. These are what I would say were the most influential new speed cubes on the market in 2020. As always, if you want to buy any of these, check out the links in the description down below, and be sure and use discount code Z3Cubing while you're there at thecubicle.com to get 5% off your order. There may be some really nice deals on these puzzles or a lot of other ones coming up in the next few days here. So yeah, what do you guys think about my assessment of the best cubes of 2020? Let me know in the comments down below. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys next time.